Hey guys, welcome to today's lesson. Today we're talking about rounding decimals, and it's coming from chapter 3, lesson 4 out of our book. So 3.4 out of our book, and we're talking about rounding decimals today. The first thing we're going to learn here is this key concept. It should be review for you, but I want you to get it down in your notes anyways. When we're looking at rounding decimals, the thing we need to remember is that to round a decimal to a given place value, you always need to look to the digit that's to the right of that place value. If that digit is 4 or less, that means we're going to round the digit down. If the digit to the right of your given place value is 5 or more, we're going to round it up. So that means if it's a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1, or a 0, we're going to round it down. If it's a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, or a 9, we round it up. And actually, when we say we round it down, it just means that number stays the same. So rather than saying round it down here, I'm going to say if it's a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1, or a 0, the number stays the same. It's technically rounding it down, but for our purposes, we're going to call it staying the same. So let's go ahead and check this out. This is exactly how I want you to do this, so please pay attention here. Some of you think you're very confident with this, and a lot of times we go too fast and we goof it up. So for right now, I would really like everybody to do it this way. Right here, it's telling us we want to round it to the nearest tenth. So we need to first and foremost locate the 10th place value. Here's our decimal. This first section right here is the tenths place value. So we underline what we're rounding it to, and we're going to circle the number that's to the right. That's the one that tells us what to do with this 2. Now, if we think back to our rules, 4 and down, it's going to stay the same. 5 and up rounds up. So 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 tells us that this number here is going to increase by 1. So we're going to round this to the nearest tenth, and our answer is going to be 5.3. Our only two options here, this number is going to tell us that either the 2 is going to stay the same. So if it was a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1, or a 0 right here, this number would stay a 2, and our answer would have been 4.2. The only other option was for this number to increase by 1. We never increase it by more than 1. That's just how rounding goes. It either stays the same or it goes up by 1. Since this was a number greater than 5, we increase this by 1. So let's try it again over here. We've got 7.096, and we want to round it to the nearest hundredth. Well, we need to find our hundredth place value, and the first one is a tenth. The second one is our hundredths. So I'm going to underline this 9. That means, depending on what this last number is to the right, we're going to circle that one. Depending on what this number is, my 9 is either going to stay the same, it's going to stay a 9, or it's going to increase by 1, which would push this to be a 0, and then this would go up to a 1. So let's see. We've got a 6. What does a 6 tell us? Oh, anything greater than a 5 means this number is going to increase. So we now need to increase this by 1, which pushes this one to increase by 1. So our answer is going to be 7.10. That was kind of a tricky one. 7.10, or if you wrote down just 7.1, those are actually the exact same decimal. We can add zeros to the end and it doesn't change the value. So 7.1 is our answer there. Let's try it again. Here I want to round to the nearest 1. Oh, 1, that's a whole number. That means I'm going to be rounding right here. I'm going to look to this 4. And remember, when I round it, whatever I underline, that's the last number in my digit. If you notice back here on these ones, I underlined the 9. Everything after that hundredth place dropped off. We didn't use any of it. Here we rounded to the nearest tenth. That means every other decimal to the right, we dropped it off. We stopped it at the tenths place. We stopped it at the hundredths place. So let's go ahead here. We're looking at the ones. My 4 tells me what? It tells me that this is going to stay the same. So I put down my 6. It stays the same, and everything else drops off. Let's try this one. I want you to try this one on your own. So pause it and figure out how you're going to round this to the nearest thousandth place value. All right, by now you should have figured out this is the tenths, the hundredths. Number 7 here is in the thousandths place. That means this 6 right here is going to be the one that tells me what to do. 6 is greater than 5. That means I'm going to round this up. So my answer is going to be 3.988. I'm going to bring that 7 up to an 8, and that's my answer. So that's how we round decimals to a given place value. Now in your homework and on your quizzes, it might tell you to look at the leading digit, so we need to find out about what that is. If we read this, you can round a very small number to a place value of its leading digit to help make it easier to understand. All right, that just means when we have some really tiny numbers that go many place values after the decimal, sometimes it gets kind of hard to even understand it. So what we do in this situation is we're going to round it to the leading digit. And what we mean there is this part. Oops, I'm sorry, I forgot to switch to my highlighter. We're looking at this part right here. In a decimal, the leading digit is its first non-zero digit when you read from left to right. So, in other words, if we're rounding to the leading digit, we're going to find that leading digit here. I'm starting on the left and I'm reading to the right. The first non-zero number that I come across is a 5. That's my given place value. So when I round this, I'm going to round it. My 8 tells me I'm going to round up, and I end up with 0.06. Over here, my leading digit is going to be, I got all zeros. This is my leading digit, so this is the number that tells me what to do. This becomes 0.009 because that 1 is 4 or less, which means this is going to stay the same. Here, my leading digit is going to be what? I hope you said 9. 9 is our leading digit. It's the first non-zero number that we find. And so 5 tells me what I'm going to do. This one's kind of a tricky one. 5 tells us this rounds up. A 9 goes to a 0, which pushes it over to a 1. So we've got 0.10 is technically what this one is. Or if you put 0.1, that would be the correct answer. And how about number 12? I want you to do that one on your own, and we'll look at it tomorrow in class. All right, sometimes we have really big numbers too, and you hear a lot about this when it comes to sports and salaries, how much professional athletes are making. And so rather than putting a bunch of numbers like this, you can see this first baseman is making $4,996,993. Well, that's a lot of numbers to try and understand. It also takes up a lot of printed space in a newspaper or a magazine. So what they do is they change salaries or numbers that are in the millions to a decimal number. So we're going to learn how to do that real quick too. When you round the annual salaries down, shown to the nearest 100,000. So the first thing we need to do is round them to the nearest 100,000. So we're going to go ahead and take them from 4,996,993, and we want to round them to this place value right here. So this 9 here tells us what to do with this 9, which means to move it up. So it becomes 5 million. Here, it's not quite as simple as that one. So we have a 4 in the 100,000 place value. This 8 tells us to round up, so it becomes 3,500,000. And you can see we've taken this 3,064,021 and turned it into 3,100,000. And same with this last one to 2,800,000. So then our second step is to write each of the rounded salaries as a decimal number in millions. So if we look at them, this is the second step. Here's what we did after the first step. We got it to an even 100,000 on each of these. Now what we're doing is basically taking this comma here and making it a decimal point. 5 million becomes 5.0 million. 3,500,000, we make this our decimal, and it becomes 3.5 million. 3,100,000 becomes 3.1 million, and 2,800,000 we shorten up to be 2.8 million. And in fact, you'll even see it written as 2.8 and then just a capital M for million, so you don't have to write that out every single time. So here's one set of problems here I want you to do. We'll do the first one together, and then for your homework or for your check, we'll talk about it in class tomorrow. I want you to do these second two. So remember, our first step is to round this to the hundred thousandths. So this is going to become 15,900,000. And from there, we're going to go ahead and take this comma and change it to a decimal, and then we drop all the zeros at the end. 15,900,000 becomes 15.9 million there. So I want you to try it with these two, and we'll see how you do tomorrow in class. Have a great night.